of the George R. R. Martin series.
And if I could add too that Brian, you know who directed, or excuse me, rather who wrote last episode?
Yeah, Blackwater was written by George R. R. Martin, and I was so thrilled because you forget that George R. R. Martin has a background in television writing, and you would think that he might hold the story as so precious that he wants to preserve certain elements of it at the expense of the television viewing experience watchers, but he doesn't.
He gets the difference in the mediums and how you have to have a when you look at Game of Thrones, the first book is a 40-hour audiobook that has to be condensed into not even 10 hours, actually more like 9 hours, and you have to condense characters, you have to condense events, and that's the problem. Like, I love the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and they had to make those kinds of choices, and they're always going to upset because everybody reads the book their own way. But when you have this, you have, kind of like in, Walking Dead, when you have Kirkman going in there and writing episodes and stuff, in this, with George R. R. Martin, it's the blessing of the writer saying, this is as close to my vision as I think we can get on television,
right?
Particularly when I'm responsible for writing this episode that happens towards the tail end in this version.
One of the things I like is it seems like the rule of thumb seems to be, let's get them to the exact same place they get in the book, and we don't mind changing the reason they get there. But what matters is we're here now in so many episodes, so many pages, we have to be at this point. Do we really care if the temporary motivation or the temporary incident is X, Y, or Z, as long as you get to that next place?
It's like, there were elements, and specifically with Daenerys storyline in this season, where there are things that diverge from the book. But I think when you go back and you read, and having read that second book fairly recently, when you really go back and think about, in the book, what happens to Daenerys in Qarth, it might not be as much as you think.
Right.
And a lot of it is stuff that plays great in the literary medium, but doesn't particularly, if you were just to film it like the book, would not be nearly as interesting. And I think the way that they got her, to the point where she is in
those spoilers.
Story. Yeah, I know. I'm just saying, no, in the what's it called, in the TV series, the way that they got her to where she needed to be was fantastic. It tied it back into, what her main motivation is, what the important part of her in the story and in this universe. And, I really just couldn't say enough for it. I'm thrilled with the series. I think it's fantastic, a fantastic achievement. And my least favorite part about it is that we have to wait so long before we get any more of it.
Yeah, and the current rumor is that they're going to break the third book into 2 seasons, right?
That's I don't know. I've repeated that a million times. I have no idea where I heard it. I could just be blowing smoke, but we'll see. It would make sense. There are things that happen in the middle part of the third book that are major issues, what would be major enough to end a season on, it would make sense. So
I will say this as a person who only made it through halfway into the first book and has no idea what's happening in the third book, has no idea where it goes. What I love about this, and I think Scott Sigler kind of mentioned his fear of getting into it because of like the way Lost and Battlestar Galactica ended. And I agree with his fears on those, because as a writer, you tend to look at things that make for very interesting episodic kind of stuff or mini arcs, but you have this feeling that it's not going to end well because the writers don't have a place to end. What I loved about this was, where the second season the first season had escalated, and then where the second season ended, we know where we're going. We have an idea of this bigger conflict that's coming, and there will be a resolution to it. It's not like Lost, where you're fearful that it's going to all be magic and they're dead, and they tell you that's not the case, and then you realize by the end of the second to last season, oh, it's magic, and we're going to use a writer's cop-out to say that they're not dead, but they are dead.
Right.
Or Battlestar Galactica, where you realize that the last episode showed more about how frustrated and tired the producers were of trying to do this show on a basic cable television budget, and just wanted to say more about their journey than the friggin' story, in my opinion.
Huh.
No, I
Yeah.
agree. And this is, listen, obviously the books, are a story that I think unfurls fantastically. And anybody who has not read the books but has watched the shows, I mean, just be prepared that there is a lot to come, and all the elements that you've enjoyed the escalation so far only escalate further. It really is just a great masterwork, and to me it's got the belt. It's got the best thing on TV belt as far as I'm concerned, in terms of handling a genre programming, making it accessible. I mean, to a wider demographic, and taking what is, although it is very readable, it's extraordinarily readable, especially when it hits its groove. It's not like the Song of Ice and Fire series is super popcorn. That's a hard thing to do. It's a tremendously difficult project, and they've knocked it out of the park.
Yeah.
And I would say this from a storytelling point of view. If you're afraid to get into it, I'll tell you the reason why I think you should. Is the way it. I'm going to say I don't know how it ends, but the way that it should end is the person who is worthy of that Iron Throne you see is the person. It ends with that person there after you're dealing with the conflicts and stuff.
I was about to say it GD better well be how it ends, and none of us know, because otherwise it's like you cannot torture an audience as bad as George R. R. Martin tortures his audience,
right,
and not give us the proper payoff of what we all expect the ending to be.
But the nice thing is that it's unlike Lost, where you're like, how the hell can they end this and make us happy? Here it's like, bring us the leader, the person that we think earned this and should be there, and handle all the other conflicts that have developed, and then end this thing and tell us Westeros had 1,000 years of peace. And we're like, thank you, great.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, and that's I'll tell you, that's a great way to put it, Andrew. And that to me is the beauty of the series, is you might have your favorite person for whom you would like to win the Iron Throne, but at various points in the story, up till now and going further, there's moments where everybody, you get pros and cons.
Right. There's even people, and that's one of the beauties of the way he writes. There are people you think that there could be nobody worse than this person, and then you'll spend 5 chapters seeing life from their perspective, and then you're like, yeah, this person's not so bad.
Yeah, it's a thing where every time they cut away to somebody else, except and even Sansa.
Yes.
Even the person I joked about, like, I've made some comment about not being able to make it through the first audiobook, and they go, oh, and then meanwhile Sansa. I'm like, yeah, but in the second book, she matures. I'll do my pick.
Yeah, no, it's great, and all I'll say is if you liked if you liked the Jaime and Brienne moments in the series finale, then you will really love the ye old 48 hours that happens in the third season.
What do you got for us, Andrew?
My pick. We've been talking a little bit about space lately on this podcast.
Yeah.
And I was going through Amazon. I said, you know what? I don't know enough about rockets and other stuff, and I don't know anywhere as much as I want. And I bought some real technical books, but then I said, so I could, calculate, C3 and delta V and all these other fun, exciting things about escape velocities and orbital mechanics and stuff. But I said, let me start off with something simpler. And I came across this book. It's by a guy named Pierce Bozzoni. He's written a number of things on books, other things on space, and other books that are about space, not books on books, because that would be stupid. And it's called How to Build Your Own Spaceship.
What's it about?
Well, Brian, it's about cats.
Goblins.
The premise of the book, and what he did is he chose the premise. He said it's a conversational book where he's talking to you as if you have decided that you want to maybe get into the space industry, maybe start a company and do something along there. And he's a guy who's written numerous books on space, so he knows his history. It's broken down into sort of 7 big chapters. When's the space age coming for the rest of us? Gets into the rocket science, the different kinds of spacecraft you have, like, why solid rocket boosters versus liquid propellants, the different kinds of liquid propellants, and then like what goes into the Spaceship One or the Virgin Galactic Spaceship Two, how that works, and the advantages and disadvantages, and in a very approachable way to describe this. He talks about a lot of things and the problems of the Apollo program and the shuttle program and what we learned and what the Russians did and the big failures. It's a great overview of the history of that, and then talking about the problems we have to solve. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I learned a lot of things in here that I did not know about, even in the Apollo program and the Russian program. And then it came out in 2009, so at that point, who was going to be the space leader wasn't quite as clear. SpaceX was still, working on their Falcon 1s and Blue Origin, Jeff Bezos' company was still there. And even Armadillo was kind of had a bigger sort of presence than they do now, which they're not doing any of the contracts or stuff. But it talks about those players, and it talks about Virgin Galactic in very hopeful terms. And Virgin Galactic, by the way, Richard Branson's company, they just got their FAA permit to test fly Spaceship Two to actually do this year. So finally,
holy cow!
Awesome.
Has it been a freaking decade since
It
it was
feels like
2004, 2005?
Yeah, and then so in any event, they talk about a lot of different ways of getting payloads into orbit, from dropping, from rockets or dropping from aircraft. The different companies have tried this stuff. An overview of kind of the military, what they've been doing. It talks about, like, for instance, we had, when Sputnik was launched by the commies, we actually had.
By the way, apologies. First of all, that's their word. You're not allowed to call them commies.
They were commies back then.
I know. Listen, I don't want to even hear that kind of language.
I'm not calling them commies now. They were commies back then.
All right. Look, I'm uncomfortable.
I mean, they were pretty proud of it, Brian. Like,
Right,
that was kind of their deal.
Yeah, it was kind of their name. All right. Lord, I mean, it was CCCP. What did that stand for, Brian?
Commie pricks.
Yeah.
Pinko.
Pinko, commie, pinko.
Technically, it was a Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, but it meant commies, okay? My point is, so when the commies...
You're like, bro, I was just raised this way. That's how I saw them as commies.
Brian's fellow travelers, if you will, Brian's comrades...
Comrades in arms, yeah.
Okay, when they launched Sputnik, apparently at that time, we had sitting in a hangar a rocket capable of doing the same thing. It's a Redstone rocket, okay? One of the things that Wernher von Braun had developed. But Eisenhower did not. We could have launched like the summer before, but Eisenhower says, nope, I don't want. It was a military rocket. And he said, no, at that time we had like NACA or whatever our civilian space agency was. He says, I want the civilian space agency to get that launch first. And so they're hurrying. They're trying to develop their Vanguard rockets, which were really good at blowing up. They were really good, very tall bombs. Not so good rockets, and partially because we had this prejudice against using some of the German know-how. The Redstone rocket, you could arguably consider it was kind of like, it was like the V3. Went from the V2 to the V3. It was our version of a V2 rocket improved. We've talked about this before. The V2 rockets, the rockets the Nazis used. Is that okay, Brian? Can I call them Nazis? Okay,
That's
just
my
National
word,
Socialists.
not theirs.
Yeah, they prefer National Socialists.
Yeah, the National Socialists of Germany, the one they launched, okay, into England, that they delivered this technology to the British repeatedly. They said, here, have them. We want you to have these. And the British, were like, no, we're going to hide in our bunker, and because they were bombs. The V2 rocket went 100 miles up. It went into space. It was the first rocket. The Nazis,
as high as Spaceship Two, right?
Yeah, Spaceship One. As high as it went.
One, sorry.
Yeah, so it went high. It would have won the X Prize.
Yes. How amazing is that?
If you put a person on it, it would have won the X Prize. And but anyhow, when that technology, when we brought it over to the United States, a lot of those scientists, the Americans, we want to do it our own. And, the Nazis and, Wernher von Braun had based a lot of it on Goddard, who, was one of us. And he was a guy that developed, the whole idea of liquid fuel or really pursued that. So anyhow, the point was, is for political reasons, we did not do it. And then the Russians beat us. And then we're like, we got to get this thing ready. And we couldn't get our Vanguard rockets ready. So what they did is they took this Redstone rocket, which was a military rocket, and they painted over it, said like U.S. Army or whatever on it, and said, oh, it's the USA.
Wow.
Said, let's go launch this. And so the rocket we ended up using was the rocket we could have used before to, you know.
So it's just the hesitation that made us be second place. We could have won.
Yeah, and not to dismiss, the Russians put a lot of really brilliant people, a lot of really clever people in there, and a lot of, you know, forced labor and into building their program, and they did achieve. I mean, the Russian achievement is such that the rocket engines that we use today, even for our own military launches, many of them are Soviet leftover hardware. There are all the other companies trying to compete with SpaceX, to my knowledge, that are building conventional kind of rockets are basing their designs on Soviet rocket booster designs that they've licensed from them, and that goes into, in this book, how to build your own spacecraft. It covers a lot of this. It gets into life support, the toilet problems, the International Space Station. It is a wonderful overview. It's a brisk 215 pages.
Breeze right through it.
So I highly recommend it. How to build your own spaceship.
All right. So let me say, for sake of following up, you remember last week I recommended that I was listening to Wild Cards, a collection of short stories written in the 1980s, edited by George R.R. Martin. And it has been very hot and cold. There's been stories that I've totally loved. There's been stories that I totally have been sleeping through. On some of them, literally, like I woke up and I'm like, I don't even understand what's going on. I'm just going to skip to the next story. But it seems like each of the authors wants to tell their own story. Stuff begins in the middle 1940s when the event happens that the wild card virus escapes and so on. I did not really care for the tying in of mutant powers, essentially, with the Red Scare and the McCarthy era witch trials. Mainly because most of that has been explored in popular movies nowadays, but I finally got to the first short story.
Bad memories about you being afraid your friends are going to get caught.
Yeah, well, and the fact that I used to be a mutant in the 1960s, that's discomforting too. But I finally got to the first short story written by George R.R. Martin, and it's exquisite, man. That guy can write. That guy can write, whether it's about Tyrion Lannister in the lands of Westeros or about Daenerys Targaryen on the, across the narrow sea, and he can write about a Brooklyn kid bestowed with supernaturally strong telekinesis who takes himself a VW bug, puts armor all around it, and uses telekinesis to fly around and do right by the world, calling himself the Turtle. It's fantastic. It's if you do the Audible experience, it's going to be hot and cold, but so far I'm happy I'm doing it, even though parts of it are really cold. However, that's not my pick. My pick is in advance. You got 1 month. You got 1 month, 10 days from the moment this is posted for you to get caught up on a little show called Breaking Bad. It's up on Netflix. You better hurry up because the final season is coming up June 15th, and it's exquisite and exceptional. I love it.
All right.
All right.
What, you're not going to argue with me? You're not going to be like the book was better?
I never seen it.
What?
I know I'm missing something about the show. I started when it first started. I mean, I'm a huge Bryan Cranston fan, and I watched the first couple episodes, but then I think I've mentioned this before. I have to get a character and either kind of understand if they're bad, I have to get that they're bad and kind of understand why they're bad. If they're good, I have to kind of get why they're good and what they do. And with his character, I think I've mentioned before, is like, all right, this guy's dying of cancer, and he's decided to build a meth lab, ostensibly to take care of his wife, and all I can think of is just the horrific and profound embarrassment and tragedy that would be when the family finds out that this is what he's doing. And it seemed like such a much more horrible thing than the poverty. And that was my problem. I going like,
that's only a problem if you get caught, Andrew.
Well,
Don't you understand?
I understand that, but that's my point. Is that I go like, I was so, for a guy that's presented as this really really smart guy and this. I go, and I guess that was just it. Is like,
here's the problem: is the only way I can sell you on why this is not that and why you would love it is to tell you things that would spoil the experience for you. So
I'm just saying he became very unsympathetic very quick.
Well,
I lost all sympathy for him.
All right, so there are things I want to tell you, Andrew. There are things that this could be why the exact reason you just stated might be why the reason that you love this show. But I'm going to tell you two things. First of all, I would recommend that you watch The Shield first because I love The Shield even more than this show. But The Shield's not available on Netflix, so I'm going to say watch this show because it's amazing. That's all I'm going to say.
How many episodes in do I have to get where I go, okay, I can get over the fact that he's portraying a very unsympathetic person?
How many have you watched? Any episodes?
Yeah, I watched like 3 or 4 episodes. I was like 4 or 5 episodes in.
And then you decided like you had a hard time understanding where he was coming from?
I understood the writer's logic of where he's coming from, but the character logic just seems so inconsistent to what I go, he's an unsympathetic person, you know. You know, a Tony Soprano, I get like, all right, guys, born this way, raised this way, this is why Tony Soprano.
You know what? I'm gonna say just get to season 2. Watch the first
Even
couple.
Like Sons of Anarchy, I go, okay, these are amoral.
Oh no! See, like Sons of Anarchy was not nearly as sympathetic for me as Breaking Bad, and even more. So here's the thing: Breaking Bad is the exact inverse of The Shield. The Shield starts with a character that you really like. You spend the whole pilot understanding what he's about. And then something absolutely shocking happens. And it totally makes you hate the character and you think he's damned. And like from the first episode, you're like, you are going down, character. And then every moment you spend watching The Shield since then, he starts at 0 and he keeps building himself up. You're like, well, he's not that bad. Well, he's doing this for this reason. Well, blah, 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 blah. And then at some point you find yourself shockingly hoping he doesn't get caught. Breaking Bad is the reverse. Breaking Bad is Andrew notwithstanding, because you're the first person I've spoken to who did not, feel for Walter White. Breaking Bad is a guy who has a situation thrust upon him that you are totally sympathetic with, but he keeps doing things that make you.
Yeah, I get that he becomes this, like, descends into being like this crime lord. I mean, I get that. I guess my thing was, I just had this sort of. The first leap just felt like such a contrivance to me that I couldn't get over that.
Yeah, all right. Well, I would encourage you to...
The second season of Sons of Anarchy, I'm going to be honest, it starts feeling like an after-school special with swearing.
What did I say? What did I just say about Sons of Anarchy? Before we went live, I said Sons of Anarchy, channeling Dan Savage, it gets better. It gets so much better. At
what point you said that, though? So.
Well, it was before, let's see. Well, I said it before the show, but...
No, I meant within the show. I didn't know what season or whatever.
Everything builds up to season 3. Okay. Season 3 is interesting, and you're like, okay, I get where they're headed here. Season 3 ends, something happens. Season 4 begins, and it's a completely clean slate. Everything is wiped, and you're like, I am seeing the beginning of a new series, and the new series is so much more interesting than the first 3 seasons.
Do their spines light up when they have sex, and do we find out why?
God, I didn't want to say it, but now you've said it, and there it is.
Let me just say one thing, and I don't want to have a discussion about it, but with Breaking Bad, and I was one of those guys with The Wire, to the point where when people were like, I just don't want to watch The Wire because The Wire fans are annoying. Yep. I understand. I was an annoying fan. But I, from the opposite side of the coin, kind of see that with Breaking Bad. I get kind of bristly with Breaking Bad fans, especially since there seems to be a narrative amongst fans of that show that are very antagonistic toward Mad Men. like for whatever. Like,
oh, you and I
reason.
got into this. I'll tell you what. If you want to lose your Mad Men baggage, your 1960s soap opera baggage, let me tell you flat out that The Shield is better than Breaking Bad. So if you want to put your money where your mouth is, go watch The Shield.
No, it's fine. I mean, listen, I'm not saying it's not a good show. I'm just saying that, like, why can't we all just have shows that we like?
Okay, that's not at all what you're saying. What you're saying is,
I'm saying no. That's literally what I'm saying.
No. That's what you're saying now. What you've said in the past is, dude, you got to watch Breaking Bad. Oh, Breaking Bad! I'm so tired of hearing about how great it is. Oh, woo boo hoo!
No,
Mad Men's success is ruining Breaking Bad.
It's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that Breaking Bad fans, I'm not saying anything about the show. I haven't seen the show. I haven't seen frame one of the show. The show could be the best thing ever. Could be the worst pile of garbage ever created, right? I don't know. That's an X factor. That's a box that I haven't opened.
I bet it's a very well done show. I bet if I get over my thing with Breaking Bad, I'll probably really get into it. It's just that some, and like I've had that problem before with shows where I just have to kind of break through and let the writers do the thing they wanted to set up and do. And that's like everything I say about that is it's me, not like me trying to say to other people like, oh no, because people love the hell out of that show and smart people love that show. And I think that we really shouldn't pick apart other people's choices and shows. And I'm glad that we're at this point where we sort of acknowledge that, you know, it's okay to have things that you like and your friends shouldn't make fun of you.
All right, kill it with fire. Kill it with fire.
Hey, listen, guys, it's been really weird. I gotta go leave. Uncle Jesse and everybody else is on. It's time for some Full House. Oh, Bob Saget, you're like clean cut. I love you. Dave Coulier, you crack me up.
Tell me your version of the Aristocrats.
Candace Cameron, you're the best one out of that family. Jodie Sweetin, stay clean. Mary Kate Ashley, Lori Loughlin.
All right, there we go. I just saved it, and we're done. That was a great show.
I hope so. I don't know.
That was good. No, I liked it. I think we're in a groove. Listen, I hate to cut out, but my phone's at like 6%, and I still need to navigate home.
Burr, 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 burr.
I love YouTube. I love everybody listening.
Burr, 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 burr.
We love you more because we're still here.
Okay, all right. Well, I will not be able to find home because I've only been here for 5 days. Dude, if I don't have the phone.
Brian and I chose careers where we could control our destiny because we were men.
All right. Does that include iPhone chargers?
All right. Have a good time, Justin. Take care, man.
Later, loser.
Brr, 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 brr. Dude. You didn't think that was a good episode? That was fantastic.
I never know.
So look at this. So the rumor was they were going to pull the plug on Breaking Bad after season 4. And they wrote the end of season 4 thinking we may be done. And so they tied it in a bow. But then they're like, okay, we'll be back. And season 5 will be just one more thing. But then,
well, I mean,
look at this.
There is so much politics that goes behind there in everything, because the problem with these shows is that everybody's contract, the major player, the showrunners, all that, they all have these built-in bumps where they get more pay, right?
Sure.
The problem is if you have a show that holds its rating from one year to the next, which is great. If a hit show gets the same ratings the second year, that's considered a hit.
Money in the bank.
But the problem is that the network may not be making any more money than they were the year before, but it gets more expensive.
Yeah. Hang on, I got a commentary on that for you.
You know, it's like Seinfeld. Seinfeld, NBC would love to, or Friends even, but at Friends, they would have loved to have, ran Friends forever. But you know, they could not change the dynamic of the show and the salaries for that show, where you're getting like each person's getting like $1 million an episode.
All right, here, this is important. Check this out.
An unknown species of horror is born as science fiction becomes science fact.
If you find any problems out there at the Colby place, just keep it to yourself.
He's over at Colby's. He's found another 20 or 30 hills just like the one we burned.
I mean, this right here is scientific phenomenon. As you know, all species of megalomorphs are cannibalistic. If you put them together, they'll kill each other off. They just don't colonize like ants or bees do.
See,
fashion models from Canada who act in gay porn.
Predators searching, destroying anything in their path. Why did they come? What do they want? In the tradition of the great science fiction thrillers, Dimension Pictures presents Kingdom of the Spiders, starring William Shatner, Tiffany Poling, Woody Strode, and introducing Alta Reese Davis.
Spiders in this area have organized themselves into an aggressive army.
I've never seen anything like it.
One minute they weren't there, and the next minute they were everywhere.
Jump, atta girl!
Listen, there's thousands of them out there. We'll never make it.
Why haven't we heard from the sheriff? He must know we're trapped in here.
I'm telling you, I don't think we should chance it.
Your nightmares will never be the same. Kingdom of the Spiders. The next victim could be you.
Suckers.
Did you know the guy who plays Theon Greyjoy
is the brother of
Lilia? I just saw this now in my RSS feed. I did not know this.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, I'd have feelings for my sister if that was my sister.
I actually think his sister is in the show is cute. I'm the only one. I'm the only other one?
You're the only one.
Oh.
I was trying to I don't, I somebody who writes a blog that I'm involved with used the term "a girl and her homely friend," and I got upset about that.
A girl and her homely friend, referring to...
Well, we had a post that went up that was talking about the South Florida Russian mob ripping people off in bars, and it talked about the magician Brett Daniels went there and he was doing magic tricks for an attractive girl and her homely friend. And I'm like, you don't use terms like that to describe women.
All right.
And you really don't piss off the Russian mob, particularly when you don't actually have an article to source it to.
So. Sure. All right, look, I'm gonna shut this down. I've got to write a whole bunch more stuff. That's crazy.
Why do you have to write anything, Brian? What would you possibly have to write?
Dude. Scam School, Book 2.
Are we still live right now?
Yeah, we're live.
How many people are there right now watching?
I have no idea. You want me to check?
Yes.
Burger. Let me go to... Oh, here's the answer right here. How did we not talk about this? This is the one thing I wanted to talk about.
We do it next week.
This and the Venus transit were the two things I wanted to talk about, and we didn't get to either of them. There's 156 watching on Justin, and then however many are watching on Google+.
I would say anybody and everybody out there, if you've read Brian's book, Scam School,
yeah,
you could do him a real solid, solid if you go give him 5 stars and say something nice about the book. So much of Amazon is driven by that. He's an independent publisher. He's not a guy who's got a big workman press or something putting the book out. He did it himself. Go do that. If you have not read it yet, go click like go put wish for it. Make it, you can push it way up as a most wish for thing. You're not whoring your click links out there. I mean, you can go give him 5 stars if you want, but he's not asking you to if you haven't read it. But I think if you looked at the sample chapters or whatever, or any of it, I think you should do that. You just buy the book, just make it bestseller. because when Scam School 2 comes out, he's going to want to blow it up. But
dude, did you see the photo? We finally finalized the cover.
No.
Hang on, let me find the cover.
Only there was a technology for me to see this where I'm at and where you're at.
If only, sir. Hold on one second. And actually, I say finalized, but I think like the only thing left to do is add some like stains on the cover or whatever.
By the way, you hear about Kathleen Kennedy going over to head Lucasfilm?
Yeah, I did. There you go. So check this out. This is, and I should point out to everybody listening, you notice that there it says Book 2 Fire. This is awesome. Andrew Main's suggestion that we have a theme to each book. And the first, like, of the first 6 tricks taught in this, the very first one is one we've never taught on Scam School, and it's awesome and deals with fire. And we have a whole bunch of other fire-related stuff right at the beginning. And I'm way excited about it because, number one, like this, we're going to go back and we're going to change the first book since it had a black cover. And because the first trick was the human chimney, first book will be called Book 1, Smoke. Book 2 will be Fire because the first effect's fire. And you know what? I'm going to go ahead and tip you a little bit in advance. The current plan is Book 3, Ice. So there it is.
Ice, baby. Too cold. Yeah. Too cold. Just real quick about Kathleen Kennedy at Lucasfilm.
Yep.
George has said he wants to kind of retire to the garage and make more personal films so he doesn't worry about box office and all that stuff. Kathleen Kennedy is a very, very accomplished producer.
Yeah, no, she's got a fantastic pedigree.
And so this means you're going to have Lucasfilm meetings run by a person who says, we need to bring revenue into Lucasfilm. We need to do it in a good way. Our chances of getting cool Star Wars films, which I still think could happen, went up astronomically. I watch Clone Wars. I'm going through Netflix, and I enjoy Clone Wars for what it is.
Yeah, well, that's there's so many things that are possible with the Star Wars universe that so I'd be interested to hear your take on this. There's an interesting short film on copyright talking about how the way the founders intended copyright was you got 25 years after it's created. That was the original, like flat out. You got 25 years, make your money, and then you're done. Which would mean that by now we could see today a sitcom set in the Star Wars universe of 1977. We could see a Hamlet in the Star Wars universe of 1977, and all these amazing things. But
well, I see, like, well, go ahead.
Well, but you know, of course, you know they've extended the copyright for these essentially indefinitely, right? Because they keep the Mickey Mouse rule and so on. And it's like, are we in a better world because nobody is allowed to make money on the Star Wars universe of 1977?
Here's where it gets, and I'm all for copyright and patent reform, not elimination but reform. The problem you get into is you take a look at, let's say, Game of Thrones. Mm-hmm. Okay, first book of Game of Thrones came out. I forget when. You know, probably 8 years ago, 9 years ago, or something.
No, okay. I think even longer than that. I want to say that my brother. I want to say it was like 99.
If you look at when you go talk somebody into investing, when you want to get somebody to put money into a property, a big part of 1996. Okay, so when you want to get somebody to put money into a property, part of it is the return on the income. And when it comes to making things like film or television, sometimes you're looking at the idea that you're going to get your return. If you don't make your money in the first couple of years, it might have to be long tail.
Sure.
And what will happen? What happens to the economics of that when, a 25-year window sounds, reasonable, to an extent, but, the problem is like, I don't know why do we need a Star Wars? I mean, all those ideas sounded horrible to me. And we're going to get so much more bad derivative versions of that.
Here's the difference though. We already have bad derivative versions of all those. And the reason we have bad derivative versions is because the only legal way for you to pursue any of these things is if you refuse to charge any money whatsoever. So as a result, you have people making crappy Troops, which is a spinoff of Cops, and they're okay because it's parody and because they're not charging. Meanwhile, it's illegal for anyone to put their heart and soul into anything that they want to derive a livable income from doing.
But I guess as an artist, my point of view, it would be stupid. I mean, to me, it's like, if I'm a creative person, either I want to collaborate with the people who created this or own this, or I want to go off and create my own universe, my own thing.
No. Well, okay, here's the thing. The world is not a better place because it's against the law for me to pitch Logan's Run meets freaking Star Wars. Those are both two properties that have aged and made their money. And the money they're making now is not based on what
when you say
created.
Their money, what does that mean? How do you define their money? That there should be a limit, that they should be only allowed to capitalize on this for a period? That implies the sense of fairness that I don't know that I agree to.
No, okay.
You know, it rakes after it makes its money back, it should become public domain?
Oh goodness, no. That's an unfair argument, and I think you know that.
No,
look,
I really don't know, because when you say made their money, I do not know what you mean by that.
They did very, very well. They made a lot of money. And here's the thing, is they're not out of the running. Their money doesn't even stop for the original product. They're still allowed to do their original product, and they're still allowed to continue to make money, and they're still allowed to make sequels. And because they were the ones who created the property, they have a massive market advantage over anyone else when it comes to Star Wars. But what I don't understand is this idea that they need the freaking hammer of law to disallow anyone else to try to tell that game. You're telling me that nobody could have told a better Star Wars story than George Lucas.
I think a lot of people could have, but that's not what I'm telling you.
But you realize it's against the law for somebody to make a buck doing it. They could do it for free, right? They could do it for free. It's fair use, blah, blah, blah. But it's against the law for someone to put their heart and soul into something and tell a better story than George Lucas could have. That is ridiculous.
Well, but again, when does it become ridiculous? At what point is it ridiculous? 3 years after it's made? 5? I'm a guy. I look at I make my money from copyright.
Well,
my money.
How about this? I mean, you tell me. The question is, when does it become ridiculous? I don't know where that line is, but I know it's somewhere before, after you die plus 70 goddamned years, which is our current law.
Right. I guess my point of view is I'm a guy that my living, my income is derived and from works that I made, when, going back to 1996. Okay. Stuff that's been around for 16 years. And there are people who tell me, well, then, you create the new and sell the new, but none of those people telling me this are doing that. I have a lot of amateurs who don't make a living they're literally from their creativity.
Right.
That are offering all sorts of economic ideas about that, but have no practical experience about that and tell me what's right or what's wrong, which frustrates me. It does frustrate me because it's like, if somebody's, I'm a guy that's dependent upon that, and I look at a market where there's sort of a window to it. And if you say, let's get rid of let's only have a 10-year copyright, I'm not worried about some kid, from Oklahoma who wants to do a better version of one of my tricks. If that kid contacts me, I'll give him my blessing. My fear is the Barnes and Nobles and the Amazon and the Time Warners of the world
won't invest.
No, just taking the if you want to buy my book, they will sell it to you.
Okay, so let me, and I don't usually do this, but for the life of me, I can't remember the video, what it was. I'm going to kick it over to the chat room. There was a video that we played on Framerate, or we played part of it on Framerate, that made the case of it was the story of copyright, and it talked about, are we better off for not being legally allowed to do it?
I've seen this.
Have you? And
yes,
you didn't agree with it?
Brian, I read the copyleft, all this stuff. I am very, very, I am fascinated by this, and I absolutely believe, but I think the thing that I look at it from is, one is that when we talk about there's a lot more sides, and the idea too is that I look at I absolutely think that we could have had a better Star Wars film, but we may not have had one at all because there may have been so many shitty versions that came out that it became like those knockoff things of every Hollywood movie that comes out that we may have been disgusted
I guess
with it.
Here's the thing: is let's take something, for discussion. We'll say here's the problem. The problem is not that I'm worried about somebody ruining the Star Wars universe by telling their own Star Wars story. We already have that, right? The problem is that Star Wars is able to act like a monopoly. I can think of no anything in the history of anything that behaved better and provided better service to the consumer because it was a monopoly, right? So with that in mind, like, let's say nothing changed, and let's say that Lucas continued to be the only people putting out any kind of Star Wars related anything for a profit. We, the consumer, would be better served if at least they had the threat of somebody coming in and telling, do you think we would have gotten the prequels if they didn't have a government protected monopoly on their intellectual property, on the idea of friggin' laser swords, which they didn't invent?
I think that, I guess my thing is,
plus,
like,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I draw so many comparisons, I guess, between my creation and my identity, I guess, is a thing. It's like, because many of these arguments can be applied to somebody who does another comedian stand-up routine at another club, another place. You watch somebody who does that, takes an act and does this somewhere else. And every argument I've ever heard about, well, it doesn't diminish the other guy, I think can apply in many ways to copyright. And it's your right as an artist to do bad or good work. It's not your responsibility to do good or bad. And I think that if you want to step back and say, the entertainment industry is still the biggest, one of the largest, it is globally, for the United States in particular, we are a world leader in our entertainment industry. And we may have draconian laws and all that, but our entertainment industry is humongous, and it's a service that we tend to be able to consistently provide to the rest of the world. And I don't know, I'm unconvinced that, if we tell investors to invest in, lots of money in things like Game of Thrones, or if we tell artists that, listen, we're going to, within your own lifetime, we're going to take away your copyright on this. I do not necessarily think that is I don't believe 100% either way, but I'm really unconvinced that is a good thing to help us create more. I don't want to see, if you've got a really talented director out there, I want him to do something different than Star Wars. I want him to be inspired like Lucas was with Flash Gordon and do something different.
Well, and that's just the problem, is that he didn't do anything different than Flash Gordon. He essentially took Kurosawa's
Brian, don't do that. He just did this. That's the worst argument in the world.
No, here's the problem is okay, if not Lucas, can we at least agree that Disney has founded their entire business on taking properties upon which the patent is expired, or I say patent, but the intellectual property rights have expired. They create things like Snow White and Cinderella, ancient bullshit, and then they turn around and they protect it on their end. They're like, well, we found this first.
We just had 2 Snow White movies.
Yes.
We just had 2 Snow White movies.
Yes.
The thing is Disney created elements within there. You couldn't name them like Wheezy, Bleezy, and all this. They created their own characters that you can't use, but you can tell a Snow White story. There are tons of Snow White stories.
Okay, but so here's the thing. You're making my argument now, because if we've got these other guys...
I'm making...
No. If we've got other guys nowadays... If you're telling me that other people nowadays can do Snow White and it doesn't hurt Disney, then why can't other people do original Star Wars stories and have it not be hurting George Lucas?
My point isn't that it will or will not hurt. My point is that the Snow White argument has been one that's been around forever because it was a poorly misunderstood by other people in the copy movement.
No, just explain to me what's different about Snow White to Star Wars. How come Snow White but Star Wars not okay?
Because in my view, people can own a copyright to a story or a storyline. In my view, people should be able to own copyrights to the things that they create, okay? They should be able to.
Like people going into an impenetrable fortress and to retrieve a princess, and they got some wacky characters with them.
Guess what, okay? I can name you a dozen movies. What was the fantasy novel, the kid with the dragons and stuff that came out?
Sure, it was essentially Star Wars, right?
Yeah, so did he get sued? No. My point is that...
Should he be sued?
What's that? No, and he didn't get sued. because there were certain themes in there. But if you take, again, there's lengthy law on when you're copying and when you're not. I guess my point is that one, you know, that if you take something that existed 100 years before that fell out of copyright, Disney does not own Snow White. Other people do Snow White movies, okay? Disney owns Mickey Mouse, and the copyright law keeps being extended, so Disney continued to own Mickey Mouse because Disney doesn't want to see anybody else do Mickey Mouse or make money for Mickey Mouse. Star Wars, part of the reason we get Clone War cartoons is because they sell Clone War toys, and because, you know, because they get the monopoly. And there's nothing wrong with a monopoly. Monopoly is not a bad word. Star Wars has the monopoly on producing Clone Wars cartoon characters and producing Star Wars action figures. If they could not be the only person making those action figures, if they had to be in Walmart next to identical copies that looked exactly like what they were doing or pretty close.
Or maybe better.
Maybe better, but most likely
we'll
cheaper and more made to be quick to a buck because the people putting the money into it are going to put less time and energy into it because it's a higher risk. My point is, whether it's better or not, the point is that if they cannot own these things, if they can't put the toy out, they're going to be less likely to do that. We've been talking about, like, you know, radical changes in copyrights and stuff, yet we haven't seen record labels or movie studios in this friggin' 16 years that we've been, you know, post 1990s, you know, this 20 years of the internet. We still have yet to see this big brand that produces traditional kind of content. You know, we have yet to see our $100 million web movie succeed or anything based upon these sort of, you know, saying, I will do this sort of, you know, this go ahead and share kind of thing with it.
Well, I think part of what surprises me is that you and I have both worked in an industry that essentially has no legal protection whatsoever. We have no legal recourse to stop somebody from essentially taking the best part of our jokes and repackaging it as something else. And yet we both have done okay, and that we both have seen a self-policing, and we both understand if somebody did rip us off, we would have a massive market advantage in that we could publicly call them out for what they're doing and be ahead of them for developing new material.
Well,
I'm surprised.
Brian, my majority of my income comes from my books and DVDs, and I constantly have to be vigilant and stop. I lose sales, tremendous amount of sales overseas, places like that, because there is no copyright protection. I can't do lectures in certain countries because I will never make the money back in sales. They can't afford to bring me. They can maybe, you know, where I can go here and lecture in the United States where people are a little bit more sensitive to copyright. They will buy my DVDs. I can't go to other countries and do that because they already have them and they paid $1 for it. But I can't share what I do there.
But nothing changes when a law is passed. It doesn't fix anything. You just have a black market.
No, there are places I can lecture and I can make money because there are copyright laws that protect DVDs and books and things I've had to write letters and to stop people from doing, that stop magic companies from just replicating them and printing them and selling them like they would do if there was no copyright protection. Parts of my things are protected by this, but where places where it's not, I can't go there. There's nothing lucrative to do for me to do that there. And also in the magic industry, we don't create the same kind of products we do that we used to because of piracy. And it is a, right. You know, are we better or worse? I don't know. I see so many benefits I get, but I can't say that it is either way. And it's not, you know, I don't know. And again, you make your money from a live performance where people pay Brian Brushwood to go there.
Right. Right.
You know, or you make your money from a program you give away for free.
Right.
Now you're in a, you know, your biggest area of profit outside of that, I would guess, is, let's say, a Scam School book, which is in a locked down environment.
No, and there's some part of me that can't help but wonder if I'm about to get stung. I mean, I don't know, though. On the flip side, like a decade ago, when we came out with the Professional's Guide to Fire Eating, you know, there was no secure, and I'm using air quotes here, there was no secure platform for it. And so we just released it on a PDF. And I was like, well, the best I can do is hold people personally accountable. So I put a big fat lie in the first page that said, warning, this copy is, you know, embedded with meta tags that say right. Your name and your location. So if it gets out, I'll know it's you that ripped me off. And I'm sure, you know, to certain people that did nothing, but to other people, they were like, well, I don't want my name associated. I was like, the fact is you cannot stop piracy. You cannot stop people from imagining a Star Wars world where two gay roommates do a sitcom. And I don't know why you would want to. It's like, I understand this vague notion of like, oh, well, you're diminishing the brand and that's going to damage my sales.
I'm a guy that part of what I have to do is if I want to produce stuff outside of myself, I have to go talk other people into loaning me money. Right. I have to talk to investors and I got to show them a return and I have to answer questions. What happens if X? What happens to this? And show us this thing. And when you go to Hollywood and you want to go pitch a TV show or something, and you look at all the different markets this thing has to go to, and the fact that most of the money does not come in the first 30 days or the first year, or sometimes even the first 3 years, and you have to sort of figure out how, in spite of piracy and stuff, you'll still make money. And that does there's a reason why there's a hell of a lot more reality TV. You get this sort of in television, you get reality or really high concept that they think they can capitalize, real quickly on a big scale, like a Game of Thrones or stuff. You get big Hollywood budget movies because they said, we know it'll be pirated, but we know that we'll get to a part of the audience that will never pirate, that doesn't care or whatever. And it has strange effects. And I do not know what the ideal situation is. I do know that as a guy that if we all of a sudden said, let's only have a 10-year copyright, my biggest fear isn't the little guy. My biggest fear is Amazon saying, great, we're going to have every Andrew Mayne book in print available for free on your Kindle when you buy a Kindle. It's when you go to Barnes and Noble and you look at, Snow White, Grimm's Fairy Tales, all this stuff,
Sure. Well, and understand, like, I totally understand the fear. But I just wonder how much of it is just fear, and we don't. Who knows what might have happened because we don't get the chance. Like for example, P.T. Barnum in his own lifetime completely released the copyright to his own autobiography, and instantly, like, 5 other publishers stole it full on. They're like, mine now, it's free, and they published it. And meanwhile, he beat them to market. Or put it out there and be like, yeah, you could buy my story from these other assholes, or you could buy it from me, the guy who lived this stuff, because he understood there's market value to the information being out there. And he was
also the world's most famous promoter of the day and one of the wealthiest men there was. And
right.
I guess and listen, I mean, I read stuff about, German copyright or lack thereof in the 19th century and the effects it had on scientific journals and how it increased publishing and stuff. And again, I get into this stuff, but the thing that we haven't seen is, for all the talk of people like Cory Doctorow and stuff about making stuff free and stuff, he's a guy that makes a huge amount of money as a lecturer. He's a guy that, as far as I know, he has yet to come up with a publishing house that works on this model. This is a guy that gets big upfronts for his books from publishers, does not say, I'll just take the back end. And I haven't seen these models. You are free as an individual to do this however you want. And I have not seen people embrace, and we've been, over 10 years of talking about these things. We haven't seen the record label that works this way when there's a god-awful amount of money out there to be done with this. We haven't seen the movie studio that's worked this way or the online TV network that could do this. And there's millions of dollars out there for somebody who can do this.
Yeah. No, and I do see that. If your goal is to crack into that $100 million plus market, it's like all the rules totally change. Because I could point to someone like Girl Talk, who was a success on MySpace and then just did a pay what you want album. And considering it's one guy or maybe 2 guys or whatever, they're able to get away with it. But
but that's the thing, is when we look at like the Radiohead experiment or stuff, they did it once and then they did the pay what you want, and then they didn't do that model again, and because they realized that like the average thing paid was really low. And you get these people who try these models experimentally, then they move on to something else because it works great as a one-time promo. Hey, everybody, check this out, because everybody you get all this goodwill promotional. Every website says, hey, look at this awesome thing they're doing. When Louis C.K.
did
his thing. Louis C.K. got millions of dollars of free publicity because when he did it was unique and novel.
Right.
The fifth guy to come along and do that doesn't get that.
I mean, yes, that is true. However, by that logic, Kickstarter is on its way down, and I don't know if that's the case or not.
Not at all. No, Kickstarter's escrow.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. No, I see that.
I wrote about my prediction. I'll pull this out. I wrote back in 1996. I wrote a whole thing trying to figure out the online economy. And my solution, me so clever, was the way that it will really work, because piracy become rampant, is going to be escrow will be the mess model. You pay and then you get it.
Right.
And that's what's brilliant about Kickstarter. That's what I love about Kickstarter.
Because there's no way for you to pirate it. It's like, if you love this idea, the game theory is you have to pay in advance or else it will not happen.
And I think that's going to be a model. I think that's going to be the model moving forward we get. And, and we as consumers, if we don't like copyright and stuff, we can start putting pressure on them saying, like, listen, we want your universe after 10 years to be a shared universe, or we want this. And I'm all for, as consumers, pushing for this sort of stuff. And this year Kickstarter will have contributed more money to the arts than the National Endowment for the Arts.
Oh my gosh, don't get me started on that. I mean, that's such a inherently inefficient way to go about it. But yeah.
So I'm tremendously excited about that. I think that content creators, there certainly needs to be a discussion, and I certainly think that there could be a discussion of, like, how do you license this idea? How do you license other people to play in your universe, perhaps? But I'll tell you what, when I look at all those Star Wars fan films and things like that, my reaction's different than yours. One, I realize, man, I wish these people would spend half as much time reading a book on how to friggin' direct actors or choose actors as they do learning Final Cut. But,
right.
Most of these things are made by nerds who just want to sit in front of their computer and draw lightsabers.
Sure.
But when I see something done really well, I'm like, imagine if you could tell your own story. Give me a different universe to go play in. Imagine if you told your own story.
Yep. I mean, that only goes so far, though. It's like, especially in a world where we derive so much joy from seeing different takes on familiar territory. It's like, I understand that part of the reason we have sequel-philia is because that's what it takes to make investors happy. But part of the reason it makes investors happy is because that's what people want. We love hearing somebody sing Amazing Grace yet a different way.
Yeah, but I would say that here's the thing to think about, though, and this is the Game of Thrones discussion brought this up and talking about Lord of the Rings. And I think part of the reason why some people really, really hate adaptations is when they read things, they believe they have this idea of canon. And the book is
which
canon.
Is horseshit.
And when you get deviation from canon, and it's disruptive, because we invented in the last, couple thousand years, the idea of the fictional narrative.
Right.
Our brain still has to wrestle with this, and people get upset. They treat their actors like they're really these people, because part of us wants to believe when George R.R. Martin sits down at his keyboard, he's not making this stuff up. He's channeling it.
He's
from
opening
another
a door to this actual place, and these stories come flowing out.
And that's a thing that I think about, that, like I have a bunch of Marvel comics, Star Wars comics, and I kind of don't want to read them because, well, they're not canon. The Green Bunny guy's not part of it. If I get invested in this character or whatever, he's not real. Not like Han Solo.
So here, maybe this is part of what fuels my rage, is in the 90s, people have a hard time, especially people under the age of 25, have a hard time understanding this, but there was a time from 1990 to 1996 that you could say the phrase, hey, remember Star Wars? And not sound like you're insulting someone's intelligence, right? You could be like, it was that forgotten, and it was that old, that out there, and it was also, and there was nothing happening except for a series of books in the expanded universe where some of science fiction's greatest sci-fi authors thought about things like, what are the stories of all these crazy aliens that we see in the cantina? What are the stories of people we see in Jabba's palace? What are the stories of the bounty hunters who failed in their attempt to find Han Solo or whatever? And they were licensed, and they didn't make a lot of money off of them, but you had massive creative energy poured into this dormant, dead space. And then, because motherfucker owned the copyright, when the prequels came out, asshole Darth Sellout sweeps his hand and says, none of that counts. Here's something. And it's like, we're not better for the fact that it's a monopoly. The fact that we have a monopoly enables one man to undo the creative artistic works of an entire generation of the greatest sci-fi authors of our generation. And you wouldn't be able to do that if he didn't own the copyright on it.
It never would have existed if he didn't have that. Though.
Sure, okay, but you know what? It's well.
He had to,
So that gives him the right to undo the creative works of other people.
I think as an artist, you have that right.
No, you don't.
Remember,
No, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't. You do not. If somebody, as an artist, if somebody takes something I teach on a Scam School thing and makes a whole routine about how this proves that God wants us to kill race, or I don't know, whatever, fucking, I'm trying to think of what's something universally reviled that you still want to protect. Okay, we'll say the reverse. Let's say somebody takes a Scam School routine and uses it to tell their allegory of why racism is good and you should own black people. Like, I would be horrified by that. But as an artist, I do not get to tell them that it doesn't count, because he gets to tell his own story and there's nothing I can do to stop him, period.
Right. And I guess what I'm saying is that if you as the creator of that, I can't tell, you can, if you say, hey, I'm going to stop doing Scam School, I don't want to do anymore, this is it, I want to go move on to other stuff. I respect that. And I like the idea that the artist has the power to do that. I like the idea that the artist gets to be the artist, can either be the narrator or can allow other people to narrate.
But you would be okay with that artist retiring and then saying, oh, also you can't do it either.
Well, yeah, I would be okay, because I would kind of like, I guess, I'll say this, is that I think about like how many goddamn Star Wars books there are and how so many of them are not that good. And I am fearful of the idea of there being even more not good. And there may be some great ones out there, but the chances are, if you read Harry Potter fan fiction, these are written for the same reasons that people sit down to write books to begin with. And you know the story with 50 Shades of Grey? Sure.
But I just FYI, I mean, feel free, go forward with your discussion. But, and this will be an unfair argument on my half, but this is the most liberal I've ever heard you sound. like this is you making a value judgment based on what you personally find pretty and unpretty, which I personally is always offensive to me, because.
No, but Brian, no, this is the whole point of this. Is I'm saying the artist should have the right to do this, and you're telling me that you're upset by Lucas's choice. And
No. An artist does not have the right to tell other people how they should tell their own stories.
Well, their own story. I mean, again, I'm saying what I'm saying is that you went from making this value judgment about George Lucas and using that as an excuse as why other people should have it. He's done crap, let other people do good. My point is to say that because he did crap with it is not an excuse to let other people have it. It's the opposite of your point of view. I'm getting from the point of view that you, as my Ayn Rand point of view, let me blow up this, Howard Roark, I'm going to blow up this tower, is that if you perverted my thing or you're changing this thing, then I'm going to destroy it because it belongs to me.
To me, I hold as extraordinarily sacred. I do not have the right, period, to tell anyone in any situation what they can and cannot say. And I think I hold that as like a founding principle. I do not own you or your mind or the words that come out of your mouth. Okay, and if you want to tell a story about Mr. Happy Pants, I cannot stop you. And it's like, and that's my own personal belief. So like, I'm thankful that the founding fathers even wanted to give me 25 years of exclusivity for that.
What is your what is your reaction to if tomorrow, are you telling people if they want to take your Scam School book, okay, and they want to sell it, if they want to take it and they want to go sell it themselves, can they do this?
If they're using my exact words, that's one thing.
They're gonna add an addendum. They're gonna do write in the margin and say, this is my twist on this. They're gonna use your words and they're gonna use that.
I would not here's what I would say.
That's a simple question, Brian.
I'm trying to answer. Rules of etiquette, let me answer. I would say I would love it if they wouldn't. You're an asshole for doing it. I am powerless to stop you, because I do not, among my rights, my natural rights, I am free to speak my mind. I am free to live my life. I'm free to provide for my family. I am not free to tell you, another sovereign individual, what to do. You are not less than me. And there is nothing that is in my power that gives me ownership of you and your actions.
Okay.
Now,
Brian,
having said that, I do have the right to try to take action to stop you. In the chess match of life, I can say, I can go to Huffington Post and say, this is bullshit. Hey, world, rally against this guy. As a sovereign individual, I have that right. But I do not have the right to tell you what you cannot say. And that is a founding principle to me.
Okay, well, Brian, I mean, we can get into absurd examples where can I call myself Brian Brushwood and go do your show and go sell my show as the Brian Brushwood Show?
I can say you're an asshole for doing it.
Okay.
I don't want you to do it. I do not own you, and I cannot stop you physically from doing it. However, I can use the leverage of me and my personality and my ability to argue my case
you would not
to
call
stop
a lawyer. You would not use the law to protect those rights, which were acknowledged by our founding fathers that ideas can't be treated like property.
Okay, here in a perfect world, things would be different. And the fact is,
I'm saying, would you?
If you're you deal with the laws you have, not the laws you wish you have, and the laws we have, I would act under. But
well, wait! You just backtracked from I would not do this, I would not exhort, but I would now in this world, no, I would use the law.
No, you'll have to clarify your position.
My point is that if somebody decides,
it sounded to me like what you said is, oh, well, you would sue, so therefore your argument is invalid. Explain to me how that's not the case.
I'm saying that I see a contradiction here. That's what I'm saying. I'm not going to say your argument's invalid. I say I don't understand why this is okay and this is not. My point is this: is that there is the idea is should ideas, whether they be books or inventions, should they have some of the same protections we give physical property? And that's what our founding fathers wrestled for. They did not come with a clear, simple answer to this, and they tried an approach to say ideas in speech, written words, etc., should have similar protections that physical property has, because they believe to foster.
Absolutely not, because physical property. There's only one of. And if you take the physical property away from me, I no longer have the physical property.
Wait, Brian, back up. Okay, but the founding fathers, that was a decision that's why they had copyright.
But here's the thing. What you're describing, your horror scenario, is already my exact world. Somebody right now, today, could come out with a green puppet called Mr. Jolly Britches, and I would be powerless to stop him. What is so great?
You keep evading my point. My point I'm trying to say is there was the question of should ideas, should they have similar or some protections like physical property?
I think 25 years was a prudent judgment by our founding fathers. I think that 70 years after the creator dies is utter and complete bullshit.
But so you do agree there should be some?
I think to foster innovation, it is a reasonable trade-off to allow some protection to foster innovation, which is what the founding fathers did, and which is not what we have now. What we have now is a free-for-all grab bag for lawyers, where people keep pushing kicking the can farther down the road, and we're coming up on 100 years of goddamn Mickey Mouse, and it's against the law for anyone else to tell a Mickey Mouse story, and that's bullshit.
Okay, but here's the thing. So you've now gone to the point where you say that it is okay, or perhaps a good idea, to allow limited protection of ideas or speech.
I'm saying I'm not bent out of shape about that concept. I am bent out of shape about where we've ended up with it, and if it were up to me, me personally, I'm not going to say how the world should be. I'm going to say that me personally, I do not believe that I have the right to tell other people what they should and should not say. That is not for me. I can respond to it, but it is not for me to say that the government should or should not allow somebody to make a buck speaking words.
You have a choice to exercise this right or not. When you published your book Scam School, you could have given it Lawrence Lessig, you could have used one of those, one of their own copyright designations. You could have said, you could have given it a CC, Creative Commons. You could have done any of these things. That opportunity was there because you could say, hey, I think the law is too onerous.
Right.
I'm going to allow you to use this within whatever this thing, and you can do that.
That's a really good point. And to be honest, in a perfect world, I absolutely should do those, and I would do those things. The fact is, I am a single man providing for a family of 4.5 and growing, and I don't understand that law. I don't know how to apply for that, and it doesn't matter.
It's easy. It's Creative Commons. It'll take you an hour to understand it.
Well, then let's do that for the second book. Let's do that. The problem is that there's no incentive for while I feel this way about it, and I'm not going to move on anyone who decides to teach a scam school related trick or whatever. I don't have, there's no incentive for me to spend even 1 hour of my time that could be otherwise providing for my family to look up the law. But you as somebody who knows all this, want to walk me through it, I would love to. I think this is a great idea.
You as a creator, under the law, you can give up whatever rights you want to. Now, like we mentioned what you did when you put out your PDF and you put your warning. When I put out my PDFs, I did this. I did not what's that?
Oh, I was just going to say my lie of a warning.
I did not use copyright protection. I did not use watermarking. I told people I did that. I said specifically, please respect that I'm an artist trying to create. I don't do this because I don't want to treat my people who buy my stuff like criminals. I did that in everything, and I continue to do that to this day. Other people in the magic industry ask me why I don't use DRM or I won't do this, and I say because the person who's buying this from me, I want to treat with respect, and I won't do that to the person who's going to steal. Well, they're going to get around they're going to circumvent this anyways, and that's always been my attitude. I'm very, very open towards people who come to me and say, hey, can I, as long as I am that point of access, as long as I have the opportunity to say yay or nay, I am extremely, extremely liberal when it comes to giving permissions and stuff about doing this, because I want to live in a world where we're more that way. That being said, if some entity starts to copy my book and sell it, I will use the law, and I won't feel like a hypocrite for doing that, because I will use the law within how I think I should be using it.
Wait, why did you just call me a hypocrite for saying the exact same thing?
I'm not. I didn't make the statements you did about I shouldn't be able to control what other people say. I don't.
No, I from the beginning I've been clear. This is my belief. This is there's the law of the land, and there's the way I believe in my heart. And one of the things I believe is I do not have the legal right to tell other people, or I should not have the legal right to tell other people what they can and can't say.
Here's the difference. What I'm saying is that I am not behaving any differently than I would in that ideal world. Okay? If I want to live in a world, which I do, where I have copyright protections. If somebody interferes with my copyright protections, I will use whatever legal powers I have. Okay? I believe that is okay to do. I believe that is okay to do that, and that is morally right to do that. You're telling me that it's not morally right.
But please don't put words in my mouth. What I'm saying,
I'm trying to understand. It's the only way I can try to explain to you how I see what you're saying.
There's a difference. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. What I am saying.
Would you sue? Would you use the courts?
It doesn't matter what I do. Let's say.
No, it matters everything, Brian.
All right. The answer is I would build Iron Man armor and blast him with repulsor rays. How does that change anything? The point is, it doesn't matter what I would do. What matters is, the question is, what is best for the art? What is best for science? What is the best for progress? And the evidence is indisputable that the more freedom there is, the more people move forward.
Brian, I guess we have to figure out how we define, when you say evidence indisputable, we have the biggest entertainment industry in the world out of the United States, even the biggest music industry, and these things are produced elsewhere, other countries. We have the biggest one, and we have probably the most protections. Is that proof that that's why we have the best, that we have protections? I won't say that, but I would also not say that getting rid of protections would mean we would have even more. As I said, we've had this big experiment of the internet, and we have yet to see the big copyright free kind of things take off as industries. We don't have movie studios that work that way. We don't have a music industry that works that way. We don't have a publishing industry that works that way. I would think there would be something by now that's proof of this, but I can't find that.
Okay.
I want to believe this.
Let's flip it around, right? Since the reason we're having this discussion is because what we want is best for humanity, I assume.
No, I want what's best for me. I'm going to be very clear. I want what's best for me.
But would you say that we're better off with large mega international companies being able to patent genes, naturally occurring genes, just because they happen to spot them?
Well, and the argument, I would say that where we're trying to get with the law is a shorter period of time, but I would say absolutely the idea is that they would not be spending billions of dollars trying to discover these things, these treatments, if they did not have protections that they could have a window to profit from it.
Do you think we're better off with the patent warfare that we're seeing with Google and Microsoft and RIM? Are we better off with this nuclear arms race of not inventing patents, but just registering bullshit and buying patents from other people? Are we better off as a society because this is the climate that your copyright law that you champion has created?
I mean, give me the alternative.
The alternative is that, again, you don't get to tell other people what to say or to think. All you can do is try to beat them to market and be better than them.
Okay, so the problem is you take like the gene patents, okay? The problem is, and it's a double-edged sword. The problem is that with gene patents, if you did not have this opportunity, the idea that for a 10-year window, I think it is now, or whatever it is, a window to exploit this, you would not have had all this private capital that went in there. We can prove this. We can look at the amount of private capital that went into that area before and then after we had decisions that said that you could have these patents on it. And it was a huge amount of private capital that went into this, and we cataloged a tremendous amount of genes. Now, some of the people chief among this, like Craig Vintner, though, have been like, you know, he's against onerous gene patents and all that, but he's also the guy that's going to be the first one to exploit it. What you happen is the people who will benefit the most if you get rid of those kind of protections very often are the huge corporations that are already there, because they're the first ones to be able to go do that. If you're a scientist at MIT and in your after hours you develop, you know, some treatment or some gene sequence or something like that, and you want to bring this to market, you need capital to do that. You know, it's a thing where you're going to be competing against Eli Lilly and companies with billions of dollars of capitalization.
All right, so
but if you have that patent.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
If you have that patent, and I have friends that are in this industry who are scientists who find little things, treatments and stuff, they spend $30,000, they borrow money from the relatives, they get that patent. That gives them strength to go out and to try to sell their idea, because they don't have to worry that the first company that sees what they've done is just going to copy it and beat them to the market. Because that's what will happen is the big billion-dollar companies will be the ones that will profit the most, because they don't have to negotiate with the little guy.
All right, so let me throw the reverse at you, and I'm gonna do the shitty thing of relying on somebody smarter than me to speak my words for me. And I only bring this up because I think 2 years ago I listened to Michael Crichton's last work while he was still alive. He has this entire essay at the end railing on the ability to patent for genes. And so he did an op-ed in 2007 saying you or someone you love may die of a gene patent that should never have been granted in the first place. Gene patents are now used to halt research, prevent medical testing, and keep vital information from you and your doctor. Gene patents slow the pace of medical advance on deadly diseases, and they raise cost exorbitantly. A test for breast cancer that could be done for $1,000 now costs $3,000. Why? Because the holder of the gene can charge whatever he wants and does, blah, 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 blah. This bizarre situation has come because of a mistake, blah, blah, blah. Here's the point. In a perfect market, in a efficient market, shouldn't all information be free and it be a race to success for a vaccine, right? If what we want to do is eradicate HIV, we should have 20 companies and they all do research to come up with an HIV vaccine. Now, granted, they don't have to share their research with other people, but what they don't get to do is proclaim, we found this gene, nobody else is allowed to test with this gene because we got here first, and we'll use the hammer of law to do it. That's not what we want, and that's not what's good for humanity. What's good for humanity is you found the gene first. Great. Keep it a secret and keep testing until you can be first to market with something else. None of us are benefited from the force of law saying that nobody else is allowed to test for this gene.
Okay, the Michael Crichton thing. And again, I am a big advocate for a shorter window on gene patents. Let me make that very clear, to balance the market versus benefiting everybody else. You take that Michael Crichton passage and you insert pharmaceutical instead of gene, okay?
Right.
If we have pharmaceutical protections for cancer drugs and things like that, if we did not give manufacturers a window in which to make money from these things, Okay, we're already seeing what's happening now is that when you try to shorten this window, they don't want to spend the billions of dollars to develop these things because they say they won't be able to capitalize them. So you lose treatments you lose the expensive, because when somebody wants to spend $1 billion in R&D on it, you don't get it. And that's my thing, is if you insert that, you can apply pharmaceuticals, the same thing, places that do not protect those things. And there are problems we're facing now with things that are very expensive to produce. They become orphan drugs. Other companies don't want to produce them. The company that has the patent on it, that now looks to expire, says, we don't want to do it anymore. We're going to produce the next big wonder drug. And even they go out of patent, nobody wants to make them. Okay? And so we see getting rid of patents doesn't mean it solves a problem, but we also see the problem. If you get rid of patenting on things like drugs, you don't get billion-dollar research.
Yeah, okay. So here's the problem I see is I think that is a very noble take on it. However, there's a lot of really terrible things that have come from noble takes on things. Essentially saying that's great in theory, but in practicality, we all know that highfalutin business will try to pay as little as possible.
I'm naming real examples of things that's happened when we've changed the laws on the pharmaceutical industries, and we look around the world at other places.
Right.
If you get rid of patents in these places that do not protect them, or you look at the drug markets and stuff, you do not get that kind of investment.
Okay, but on the flip side, these same drug companies are turning around and they're recognizing that there are markets where they do not stand to benefit anything by charging full price for their drugs. So instead, the same drugs that they're selling in the United States for $20 or $30, they, from a monetary aspect, say, you know what? It costs us 80 cents to make this. The fact is we could save lives overseas by charging $1.50 for it. Let's go ahead and do that. And it in no way undercuts what's going on. I don't understand.
Because we're subsidizing it. We're subsidizing it because they know they can, in countries that protect patents, okay, they can sell these drugs and they can have their prices protected by the patent protection.
Okay, but hold on. I mean, so I guess your point would be, like, if I were to say what's to keep them from just keeping their formula a secret and selling it for $20 in the U.S. and $1.50,
I mean, you can't keep it. It doesn't. Those kind of that it won't work in things like drugs and other areas. You can't. Secrecy is great for rocket engines that nobody else gets to take apart or analyze. It's bad for pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, no, I could see that. I could see that. Man, I don't know what to tell you outside of I just don't see the world being healthier or better as a result of protection. I have yet to see one example in all of human history where a protected monopoly made life better for anyone.
So Brian, and here's the problem is that you and I are looking at the evidence very, very differently then. I would take a look, any single cancer drug to me is proof of that. Any single cancer drug developed by a private corporation or a publicly held company is proof to me it has made life better, because when you look at the amount of drugs they have to produce, the amount of trials they do where they find that one drug that works, okay?
Yep.
They're spending hundreds of billions of dollars a year to develop drugs, and we're beating cancer slowly, day by day. We're improving cancer rates, and this was driven.
Right. But by that logic, then why do people tell their findings in Science and Nature magazine? By that logic, they should never share that stuff.
Wait, what are you talking about?
Cancer research. Like if you're working at Bayer and you come up with a novel way to apply multiphasic injections or whatever, by the logic you're saying, you should never publish that in a journal so that other people can rip you off and take advantage of it.
You said name an example where giving protection has ever helped humanity.
No, that's not what I said. What I said was
okay, because that's what it sounded like.
No, what I said was I cannot think of a single example where we're better off for having a protected monopoly.
Okay, and again, to me, so I would understand that as, so if you come out with a cancer drug, okay, something that treats, we'll call it, cancer X cancer, okay,
butt cancer.
Okay, I guess what I'm saying is that company that develops it, again, and drug companies do not share probably 90% of the stuff that they develop, by the way. They're very, most of that stuff comes from university-funded studies, et cetera, where they get funding outside because people say we want to know. But when you get the novelty or whatever, you patent, okay? If you give drug companies a limited monopoly on the production on this drug. Okay, is that why they invest the money in that? And I would say the answer is obviously yes. That is why they invest the money in this drug, is because they're allowed a limited monopoly on it.
Sure. Okay. But again, let's define limited monopoly, because it's starting to sound like I am not against the profit motive. I'm not against people making a buck on what they've developed. What I am against, for the record, is after the creator dies plus 70 years. It's fucking ludicrous, and there's no justification for it.
Well, we're getting a long way from the statement you made earlier about, is there any benefit to giving somebody a monopoly on something?
I said I know of no situation that is made better by protected monopolies. That is true.
And I offered.
I'm speaking about for society in general. Now, obviously, it's better for the individual. And I guess
my point is, like, would you say that that cancer drugs are benefit to society in general, and are benefited that we have cancer drugs because we get investment because of those limited monopolies? I mean, would you say that is an example of where?
Yes to the first part. I don't know about the second. Yes, obviously, we're way better for cancer drugs, and we're way better for the investment for them. But I have no idea. I think it's a fallacious assumption to say that the protections that make possible the cancer drugs, which I do agree, you got to have a reason to make money in order to invest the effort to produce a cancer drug. But I am not in defense of our current laws. Our current laws support nothing but crony capitalism. They are ridiculous. They're in the pockets of big industry like Disney. It's ridiculous that we're 100 years of Mickey Mouse and Mickey Mouse is still protected. There's not a person alive who had anything to do with the creation of Mickey Mouse that stands anything to lose from other people making Mickey Mouse cartoons nowadays.
Again, I have from the onset, I am in full agreement. We need to rethink how these things work and how long. I believe there needs to be a window for how long you're allowed this. You know, the length of that, I'm totally open for. But I argue vociferously that you do have to extend some protections to ideas and stuff like you do physical property. I don't like to get into that. The problem is, like, when you make that argument, nobody alive or whatever, it's like, I think that I don't like the idea of societal fairness, this idea that we have this arbitrary idea outside of the market of what fair is or what fair isn't. I think the market decides. And when I hear ideas of fairness and income equality, I cringe.
How can you say the market decides and then in the same breath say that market needs to be held out of the equation for up to 140 years?
Oh, well, again, but you're saying, okay, the market, it's the value of that idea. Again, the reason there is a market is because you can, and I did not say it needs to be held up. I've said since the beginning, I think we need to rethink the windows on this. But my point is you need to be able to define these ideas as property, okay? And that's how you get in. That's how you get a market from this. Is the idea is when you can put a value in this, and part of that value comes from a limited monopoly over a window of time you have on your idea or your concept, okay? But when we get into nobody else created Disney or whatever. Again, I cringe whenever I get into, somebody makes too much money or this guy's made too much or they've made enough or whatever, because I don't want to get into,
Sure. And don't get me wrong. Like, I would love to be the guy who, fed 3 generations of Brushwoods based on the idea of a red puppet that looked like a voodoo doll. It's like, I mean, don't get me wrong. That would be great. However, I don't know that would be better for society as a result. And that's what I have a real problem with.
And I don't, again, I take what I think is right or wrong and what I think, I can line up with what my view is about markets, evolution, capitalism, prosperity, etc. I think we absolutely benefit when we treat ideas and concepts with some of the same rights we do physical property. I absolutely agree that we need to try to find that optimum, and things like gene patents, they should not be these ridiculously long things. They should be long enough that a company can go in there, can do it, can make will have incentivize investors to put money into it, but not so long that if that more people would die than if they had never existed.
All right, so let's do this. So that we don't go all night and we end on a positive note, let's play a little game where we'll take turns, not making arguments, but instead proposing scenarios and seeing just a thumbs up, thumbs down. Like, that's a good result of copyright or that's a bad result of copyright. And so, like, for example, I'll start with the first.
Yeah, Brian, nothing is ever.
To us, to me, and to you. This is opinion only, and I'm not.
For me personally.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. I'm not going to judge you, and you're not going to judge me.
But I also have a weird listen. Like, I bought Game of Thrones on Blu-ray, and I don't even own a Blu-ray player because I so wanted to encourage people to keep creating more stuff like that. And I have HBO, and I can watch it for free anytime.
Exactly. Okay, so that's
how I think.
Sure. I
don't have a single BitTorrent or copyrighted film that somebody else I stole anywhere on anything I have. I'm so alien to many people about this.
Right. Okay. So let me start off with an easy one. Humanity is better, and that'll be the judgment upon which you and I both go do it. Humanity is better because nobody 100 years after the creation of Mickey Mouse is allowed to tell any stories about the Mickey Mouse. So this is like a baseline thing, right? So I'm going to say no, and I hope you'll say no too.
I don't know how to answer that. I don't know.
It's opinion. Yeah, nobody's gonna hold you to anything. You think society's better for it? All right, that's interesting. All right, now you go.
Ideas, be they be patents or copy or like stories or stuff like that, should be treated as property for a limited period of time. Okay?
Behind that, you and me. All right. Given the founding fathers' take on copyright for where we began and where we are now, the world could be a better place if people were legally allowed, 25 years after the release of Star Wars, to tell their own stories in the Star Wars universe.
This would be Jefferson. This would be Franklin.
Yeah, which one is you, though? Really? Oh, that's interesting.
I cannot tell you how I look at how much talent is wasted already in that universe that could be telling new stories.
Yeah, I think you might be colored by that. I think you might be colored by that experience because meanwhile, like, imagine if Kevin Smith did a sitcom, did Clerks in the Star Wars universe. How great would that be? I would be so behind that.
Bad example.
Okay, all right.
I will listen to Kevin Smith talk 2 hours about the movie he made, but I will not watch the movie he made.
Well, I mean, I understand that. Maybe, you know what? What if it was a for-profit podcast? What if it was Star Wars storytelling?
And I don't want to see a Star Wars sitcom. I really don't.
Yeah.
I want to believe it's real. I want to believe that fucking stuff really happened.
Okay, but that's you. You know, that's you projecting your own beliefs on. All right, so your turn. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's me. Like, no, don't.
All right, go ahead. What do you got? And keep in mind, like, the goal for me for this game is to find the gray areas that will surprise each of us.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Like I don't. If you is 100 years for Mickey Mouse right? I don't know. It absolutely sounds absurd and crazy to me. What I'm saying is, like, I want to believe a lot of things about this. As a guy who is very vulnerable to copyright and all this, I really want to believe a lot of these things. And I guess my thing is that I would have thought I would see more things by now. I really would have thought we would have seen, the online, the sort of models. And we even look at things like Revision 3, where they ended up selling out to a mainstream company that makes its money from cable subscriptions because their content was more value than their model was.
Right.
I think.
Patrick Dillahanty has a great one. Is it a good or bad thing that a very litigious family of people owns the copyright to Happy Birthday to You, and that they sue any restaurant who sings it.
Hate that song. Hate that song. Hate that song.
Did you ever see the Barretts and Barat take on that?
No. That's a, Happy Birthday is a great example of one of those things that we all kind of feel this ownership around, and it's been, you think like, man, this thing, how long is, I forgot, like, how old is Happy Birthday?
So let me show you this real quick. This is what he was referring to, which I thought was extraordinarily clever. I got to wait for this 30-second advertisement to play, and then I'll show it to you. See, and here's the other thing, too, is there's some part of me that is, like, very aware that what happens online and what happens on stream is an analog for what would happen if we were all in the room together, especially right now, because we're, neither of us are making any direct dollars from this moment. But by the letter of the law, the very nature of what's about to happen is, it used to be a civil offense where only the aggrieved party would sue us. But thanks to the DMCA, it becomes a federal offense. I'm about to commit a federal offense, which is messed up. And I don't like that about our copyright law at all.
Can I tell you? Okay, go ahead.
No. Wait here. Just watch this real quick and we'll talk more about it.
You know how sometimes you want to use a song in a YouTube video, but you can't because it's copyrighted? And you know how sometimes that song is just so poignantly ingrained into our culture and has been for so long that really it has no business being copyrighted anymore? Like, well, I can't think of a specific example right now, but my point is this. I just wrote a song that I think people should be able to use whenever they want, however they want. I wrote it to the tune of Good Morning to You, which is in the public domain. I hope you like it. It's just a quick little ditty about an Egyptian river god who finds a place to sleep atop 2 sheep and a deer named Harrison, who also happened to be governors of Algiers before the French conquest in 1830. Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday dear Harrison, happy birthday to you. There you go. And like I said, use it whenever you want because both the melody and the lyrics are free of copyright.
So, I mean, number one, that's not really speaking to an argument one way or the other.
Well, but I'd say with the Happy Birthday thing, what's interesting there is I don't think we've had a court challenge about that in the last 10 years or so.
Well, mainly because freaking all the TGIO Chillibis have gotten in line. I mean, they've all learned to make up their own stupid songs.
Well, yeah, so I guess what I'm saying there is like, and that's a thing where you look at it where Happy Birthday would probably not hold up because there was so much prior art, there's so many other versions of it, and so many and examples of that. In the difference between the idea of civil and criminal is one of the things is that if you make things a criminal, what it theoretically allows is then the guy who cannot afford a lawyer, if using I love Amazon. If Amazon comes in and says, we really like your book, we're going to make or your video, and we're going to go out there and we're going to sell it, and you're not going to get a dime from it. In a purely civil lawsuit world, average guy does not stand a chance. You don't stand a chance. If there's, and realistically, they don't even now with the criminal sort of. Let's be honest. Google.
Well, I think that's the problem. Like when this was coming in, the problem is that the distinction is if you own, I believe it was at 1999, $2,000 of, or a value of $2,000 of copyrighted material that you do not legally own, then it becomes a federal offense. And I don't think people understand the bigness of a fucking federal offense. For it's like I understand HBO, you're ticked off. I didn't pay you $10 a month, but you realize just owning the entirety of Mad Men or of we'll say Mr. Show or whatever. You grab Mr. Show on there. They could say, well, this is we charge $10 per episode for this, blah, 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 you're over $1,000, and now you're going to jail. Fucking jail. There's nothing okay about this to me.
Yeah, I think jail's a little bit,
Okay, now understand though, you're dangerously close to making the argument of, oh, we're not really going to charge you for the things that we've made illegal, which I have no tolerance for.
I think that, again, I don't think I'm close to that at all. I think that the copyright law was written by a paranoid industry for a bunch of congressmen in their pockets, and their solution to these things are extraneous and draconian. And there's a reason why, the number of people who've actually ever been, and again, let me get to my point on this. There's a reason that, I can't even, I'm sure somebody somewhere has actually maybe had to do jail time for this, but the industry is so afraid to actually try to push for that beyond a point, because they know any support they have will absolutely collapse as people realize how ridiculous
you of all people know that I mean, it's the KGB credo that it's like, make everything illegal, that way you could get somebody whenever you want them.
That's the intent. I don't think that's a good model to pursue.
It's horrific. It's terrible. It's anathema to what America was founded on.
But I'll also say that the problem is that we live in a climate where a kid will take one of my DVDs, will upload it to YouTube, okay, and tell everybody, check out this Andrew Mayne DVD. And I will contact them and say, hey, listen, I kind of try to sell this and try to limit access to it with the idea, one, because it's a magic secret, and if the fewer people know it, it actually has more value, etc. And the response is, well, I'm a fan. And it's this because they are so alien to the idea of idea ownership.
Right. Okay, but help me how that story leads to you're okay with a legal system that sends that kid to prison, federal prison.
I already told you I'm not okay with that. I'm telling you the environment in which it comes from, and I'm not telling you this is why these people are hysterical. We have to understand why they're hysterical. It does not mean their hysteria is right. It does not mean the response is right. It means, when the White Walkers are coming towards us, we want to know friggin' why. And my point is that understanding that mindset helps us come up with better solutions. And the problem is that these guys, they look at and they think every 15-year-old kid wants to rip them off. And they come up with, the head of Syria, people want freedom. And he realizes freedom means that he's going to be friggin' going on death row and tried in Syria. So his response is, I'm going to gun them down. It is a horrible, horrible, horrible solution, okay, to what he's trying to do. What I'm saying is that is why they have these stupid ideas, and this is how they see the world. And I see a little bit of this world, but I know the answer is not throw the kid in jail, okay? Right. But I also don't think the answer is, not that you're saying this, but I don't think the answer is get rid of copyright. You know?
Right.
So I guess my point is just that, and I also understand too that the odd thing is that when they came up with these criminal penalties, which I think are ridiculous and onerous and stuff, and that putting somebody in jail for downloading something seems silly to me, maybe a fine. But my point is that when you went and you created criminal penalties, it then actually empowered people who did not have the power, individual copyright creators, holders. The little guy who wrote a song or did this could then protect himself in case, somebody else did that.
Yeah,
Does this help? I don't know.
I mean, I see where you're coming from, but I don't know that we're necessarily better off for it. Okay, look, here's the thing. I've had to pee for over an hour, so I gotta split. But dude,
it's always Brian, again.
How about this for a bonus hour?
I always enjoy this.
Dude, well, you know what I like about discussions like this is I feel like we're both on the same page, where it's like we can sketch out the lines, and as long as we're not talking about a one-way ticket to Mars or a space elevator, we could do it without getting bent out of shape about it.
Hey, and again, the line kind of comes up to, there's discussions involve definitions or values when they get to be contentious, because one person has a different definition than the other one, or a different value.
Right. And, all right. Well, look, man, I'm going to shut the feed down, but thank you, everybody who joined us on everything.
I'm going to Taco Bell.
Bye, guys. All right, there's that. That's shut down. And then I'm going to shut down the Justin feed. Bye, guys.